Zak Bagans was never meant to live an ordinary life. While most people spend their lives running from fear, Zak made it his mission to chase it. From abandoned asylums echoing with the cries of the forgotten to cursed objects locked away in glass cases, he turned terror into entertainment and built an empire on shadows. Ghost Adventures wasn't just another paranormal series. It was raw, confrontational, and unrelenting, led by a man who seemed fearless in the face of death itself. To his fans, Zak was untouchable, a legend who walked boldly into places most people wouldn't dare step foot in. But the truth behind the persona is far darker. At 49 years old, the man who made his career by surrounding himself with death is now a figure haunted by more than just the ghosts he pursued. The irony of Zak Bagans' story is that the hunter has, in many ways, become the haunted. His life is filled with contradictions: fame and isolation, success and decline, power and fragility. The Haunted Museum he proudly built in Las Vegas is the crown jewel of his empire, a place where thousands of fans line up to see cursed objects, notorious artifacts, and remnants of lives ended in tragedy. Yet to Zak, this museum isn't just a collection, it's also a prison. Every day he walks among relics that carry the weight of darkness, and as much as he insists on being the master of fear, those close to him know that the very shadows he invited into his life have never left. His fascination with fear began long before cameras ever rolled. Growing up in Las Vegas, Zak was a kid who felt different from everyone else. While his peers dreamed of glamorous futures or spent afternoons chasing sports, Zak's mind wandered to darker corners. He wasn't interested in ordinary games. He wanted to understand what lay beyond life. Ghosts, spirits, shadows, the unknown, these weren't things he feared. They were things he craved. Where others shivered at ghost stories, Zak devoured them. Haunted houses, urban legends, horror movies, these became his companions. It wasn't just about thrills, it was escape. For a boy who often felt awkward, isolated, and lonely, the darkness gave him a sense of purpose. It gave him something to chase when the rest of life felt out of reach. That obsession only grew stronger in his teenage years. Zak didn't just want to hear ghost stories, he wanted to test them. He wanted to stand in the places whispered about in hushed tones, to feel the chill of the unknown against his own skin, to prove that the supernatural was real. This wasn't just curiosity, it was compulsion, a desperate need to confront what others avoided. Friends might have seen him as reckless, sneaking into abandoned houses, daring to walk hallways believed to be cursed. But for Zak, it was more than a thrill. It was the foundation of an identity that would later consume his entire adult life. By the early 2000s, that obsession transformed into ambition. He wasn't just going to explore the paranormal, he was going to document it. Alongside Aaron Goodwin and Nick Groff, Zak filmed a scrappy, independent documentary in 2004. They had no major backing, no big budget, just cameras, courage, and an unshakable hunger to prove something. That documentary became the seed of Ghost Adventures. It was chaotic, gritty, and raw, but that was what made it authentic. Unlike other paranormal shows that took a calm, investigative tone, Ghost Adventures was different. It felt like a street fight with the supernatural, and Zak was its defiant leader. The Travel Channel took notice. Practically overnight, Zak Bagans went from being a thrill-seeker with a camera to the face of one of the most successful paranormal series in television history. Audiences couldn't get enough of him. He wasn't polished, he wasn't quiet, and he wasn't cautious. He yelled into the darkness, he provoked spirits, he challenged demons to reveal themselves. For viewers, it was electrifying. This wasn't paranormal investigation, It was confrontation. Ghost Adventures was the adrenaline-fueled answer to every horror fan's wildest fantasy. And at the center of it all was Zak, a man who seemed completely unshaken by the idea of death. But success always comes with a price. The bigger Ghost Adventures became, the more Zak was forced to live up to the character he had created. Fans expected him to be fearless, larger than life, and bold enough to face anything. What began as passion quickly blurred into performance. Zak wasn't just Zak anymore. He was Zak Bagans, the ghost hunter who stared down demons without blinking. He couldn't simply walk away, couldn't show vulnerability, couldn't admit that sometimes fear got under his skin. To millions of viewers, he had become the embodiment of defiance against the unknown. But to himself, the line between man and persona had begun to disappear. As Ghost Adventures grew into a cultural phenomenon, Zak expanded his empire. He released books, documentaries, and specials, each feeding into his legend. Then came his most ambitious project, the Haunted Museum in Las Vegas. For fans, it was a dream come true, a place where they could walk among infamous artifacts like the Dybbuk box, cursed dolls, and possessions tied to notorious killers. But for Zak, it was more than a tourist attraction. It was his life made physical, the embodiment of everything he had chased since childhood. Every hallway told a story of tragedy. Every display carried a legend of suffering. And Zak lived inside it all. Yet the museum that was meant to be his legacy quickly became something else. A cage. Visitors could leave after an hour. Zak stayed. He immersed himself daily in energies that even skeptics admitted felt heavy and unsettling. Over the years, he described strange physical reactions, blurred vision, crushing dread, sudden illness. After handling certain artifacts, guests fainted, some cried, others swore they were touched by invisible hands. Fans called it proof. But for Zak, it was reality. Every day he woke up and stepped into a world drenched in death, negativity, and trauma. It was no longer just what he documented, it was what he lived. Financially, Zak thrived. The show remained a ratings powerhouse. The museum drew thousands of paying visitors. His name became synonymous with modern ghost hunting. But personally, cracks were forming. The more he built, the more he isolated himself. Surrounded by cursed objects and stories of death, he became tethered to darkness in a way few could imagine. Former colleagues began to notice changes. Nick Groff eventually left, sparking rumors of behind-the-scenes conflict and Zak's controlling nature. Insiders whispered about his need for total authority, his intensity, his refusal to share the spotlight. Fans who once saw him as a fearless adventurer began to wonder if the character he had built was taking over the man beneath. And perhaps the most tragic part of Zak's story is not what fans saw on camera, but what they didn't see at all. Unlike many TV personalities who branch out into family life, friendships, or other ventures, Zak remained tied only to his work. He didn't marry. He didn't have children. His relationships were fleeting, often hidden from public view, sometimes fractured under the weight of his lifestyle. He rarely appeared outside of his paranormal world. For a man whose face had been on television for nearly 2 decades, his personal life was almost non-existent. His empire gave him fame, wealth, and influence, but it also left him isolated, defined not by who he was, but by the shadows he chased. And that is where the tragedy deepens. At 49 years old, Zak Bagans is not just a ghost hunter anymore. He is a man haunted by the very darkness that made him famous. The persona and the person have fused into one. The museum is his crown jewel, but also his prison. The show gave him everything, but it also took away the chance to be anything else. The child who once ran toward haunted houses has become the man who lives inside one. And no matter how successful, no matter how fearless he appears, that kind of life always comes with a cost. The deeper Zak Bagans went into his empire of shadows, the more whispers began to spread about his health. Over the years, fans noticed small changes. His once forceful voice sometimes sounded strained. His posture seemed more guarded, his energy less explosive than before. He admitted to dealing with chronic pain, vision problems, and back issues. At times, he even attributed these ailments to the cursed artifacts he lived among, suggesting that his daily proximity to such objects might be draining him physically and spiritually. Whether spirits were truly to blame or not, the toll was undeniable. Zak no longer moved like the reckless young investigator storming into prisons and abandoned hospitals. At 49, he carried the weight of decades spent immersed in fear, and his body was showing it. Insiders have described him as increasingly private, even reclusive. While many television personalities embrace the spotlight outside of their work, attending events, building businesses, or simply enjoying life, Zak rarely steps away from the world of ghosts. His appearances outside of paranormal projects are few and far between. His colleagues orbit his projects, but long-term bonds often fracture under the pressure of his demanding intensity. Some who worked with him quietly admit that Zak's obsession with control, combined with his relentless immersion in darkness, has made it difficult for him to maintain close personal relationships. The Haunted Museum became the clearest symbol of this life. Fans visit for a thrill, but Zak lives inside the museum's walls day after day. The Dybbuk box, believed to be the most cursed object in existence, sits under lock and key in his collection. There are paintings tied to misfortune, dolls rumored to bring nightmares, and personal items belonging to serial killers. Each room is a monument to tragedy. Visitors walk away unsettled. Zak stays, absorbing it all. Psychologists have pointed out that even if one doesn't believe in spirits, constant exposure to stories of trauma, death, and negativity can erode a person's mental state. For Zak, that's not an occasional encounter, it's his entire lifestyle. And the effects show. Fans who followed Ghost Adventures from the early days have noted how Zak's tone has shifted over the years. In the beginning, his bravado felt playful, almost theatrical. He would charge into dark basements, yelling defiantly at unseen forces. But as the seasons went on, that energy grew heavier, darker, more somber. It was as if the years of surrounding himself with grief and death had etched themselves into his voice, his demeanor, his very presence. Zak Bagans, the man who once shouted into the void, now looked like he carried the weight of that void on his shoulders. His personal life reflects the same isolation. Unlike many of his peers who eventually step away from the grind to build families or establish lives outside of their careers, Zak has remained alone. He has never married. He has no children. His rumored relationships are few and fleeting, often ending in speculation rather than stability. To his fans, this mystery adds to his allure. But to those who look closer, it suggests a man consumed by his work to such a degree that there is little left for anything else. The empire he built gave him everything the world could offer: fame, wealth, influence, but it also left him without the grounding connections most people rely on when the lights go off. Former colleagues have hinted at this struggle too. Nick Groff's departure from Ghost Adventures was a shock to fans, sparking debates that continue today. Was it creative differences, power struggles, or simply the natural collapse of a friendship under the pressure of Zak's perfectionism and need for control? Whatever the truth, it left a mark on both the show and Zak's image. Critics accused him of being too controlling, too driven by ego, too consumed by the need to protect the empire he had built. Admirers defended him, saying that his intensity was the very reason the show became a global success. But either way, the cracks were showing. And then came the criticism of his work itself. Some accused Zak of exploiting tragedies, sensationalizing haunted objects tied to real deaths and violent crimes. His museum, in particular, has been the focus of controversy. While fans see it as a groundbreaking paranormal attraction, others see it as entertainment built on grief, a place where pain is repackaged and sold to thrill seekers. For Zak, these accusations are part of the tightrope he has always walked. He thrives on fear, but fear always has a cost. Perhaps the most haunting part of his story isn't what outsiders accuse him of, but what insiders whisper about: paranoia. Over time, Zak has grown more distrustful, more guarded, less willing to let anyone get too close. For a man who has spent his life chasing ghosts, he has ended up living like one, detached, drifting, and misunderstood. The persona of the ghost hunter has become his entire reality, leaving little space for the man beneath. Zak Bagans has spent most of his adult life inside death. He has investigated asylums where patients once suffered, prisons where men were executed, battlefields where thousands bled, and homes where families endured unimaginable tragedies. Unlike other researchers or documentarians who step away after finishing their projects, Zak never leaves. His work is his home, his business, his life. Even skeptics admit that such immersion in negativity would affect anyone. And at 49, it has clearly shaped Zak into something caught between two worlds: the living and the dead. The museum itself embodies this paradox. To fans, it's his legacy. To Zak, it's both achievement and burden. The Dybbuk box, cursed dolls, serial killer artifacts, all of these objects carry stories of suffering. Visitors pass through, shaken but free to leave. Zak remains, day after day, among objects that some believe hold malevolent energy. It is a mirror of his own life. Haunted, admired, but also isolating. He is both the master of fear and its prisoner. The tragedy of Zak Bagans is not that he chased ghosts, it is that he became one. His empire thrives on death, but it has also robbed him of life. His fame is undeniable, but his personal world is quiet, isolated, and filled with shadows. The man who wanted to prove that ghosts exist has built a life so consumed by them that he often seems ghost-like himself. At 49, Zak Bagans is both a legend and a cautionary tale. He has shown millions that fear can be thrilling, that the unknown can be faced, that shadows can be chased. But he has also shown what happens when obsession becomes identity. He is wealthy but alone, famous but isolated, powerful but vulnerable. His body aches, his circle of trust is small, and his world is defined by the very darkness he once dared to challenge. For now, the answer remains unclear. But one thing is certain: Zak Bagans' story is one of the most haunting in modern entertainment. Not because of the ghosts he claims to have found, but because of the price he has paid to chase them. If you've stayed with this story until now, I want to hear what you think. Do you believe Zak Bagans has been consumed by his obsession with the paranormal? Do you see him as fearless and dedicated, or as someone slowly being destroyed by the very darkness he embraces? Share your thoughts in the comments below.